Ladies and gentlemen, there is a mystery that reaches from the beginning of time to the end of days, a mystery that is playing out right now before our eyes. It is cosmic, it is prophetic, it is ancient, and yet it is unfolding in real time. It begins in the heavens but culminates on the earth, on a mountain, on a battlefield, in a holy city, and at a place that has witnessed fire, judgment, and the cries of a nation. The dragon, who is the dragon? In the scrolls of the Revelation he is revealed, not as a myth, not as a fairy tale, but as the great adversary, the ancient serpent, the enemy of God, the deceiver of the nations. He stood before the woman clothed with the sun. He sought to devour the child as soon as it was born, and he has not stopped. He rages still, but where does his rage focus? What does he seek? The answer lies in a mountain, Mount Moriah. The Temple Mount, the most contested piece of land on earth, not because of oil, not because of gold, but because of something far more powerful, the presence, the glory, the covenant. That mountain is where God placed his name. Where Abraham ascended with his son, knife in hand, where the ram was caught in the thicket, where Solomon built the house, where the glory came down, and where one day it shall return. The dragon knows it. He fears it, so he rages. He has stirred up kings and kingdoms, empires and caliphates, wars and riots, for one reason, to lay claim to the mountain that belongs to the Most High. But there is more, because prophecy centers on convergence. And just as the Temple Mount is the center in the Middle East, so too is there a parallel, another ground zero across the sea, a land once dedicated to God, a nation once founded on covenant, and in that land a ground zero where towers fell, fire reigned, and warnings were given. That ground is sacred, not by virtue of holiness, but by consequence. It is where judgment began, and what began there has not ended. The dragon moved against the temple of Jerusalem. He moved again in the days of Antiochus, seeking to defile the altar. He moved again through the Romans to destroy the sanctuary. And now, in our day, he moves in the shadows, through ideologies, through nations, through spirits that parade as light. The mount is trembling. The nations are aligning, the warnings are sounding, and we stand between two ground zeros, the mount of the covenant and the place of judgment, between the fire that once consumed the altar and the fire that fell upon a modern tower. What is the connection? Both are harbingers. Both are signs. One tells of what was, the other speaks of what is to come. For in the end the dragon will rise, the nations will gather, the mountain will be surrounded. But from that place shall come the fire of God, the return of the King, and the shaking of heaven and earth. You, child of the Most High, are not called to fear the dragon. You are called to overcome. You are called to stand upon the mountain of God, to lift your eyes above the nations, to discern the signs, to walk in holiness, and to prepare the way. For the dragon shall rage, the nations shall conspire. But the one who sits in the heavens shall laugh, and the mountain shall shake once more, not with war, but with glory. The temple will rise, the trumpet will sound, and the King shall reign from Zion. Prepare, watch, and do not be silent. The mystery is unfolding. The time is now. The mystery of the dragon begins not on earth, but in the realm beyond time, in the unseen dimension where thrones, dominions, and powers dwell. The ancient scriptures speak of a being, a creature of intelligence, beauty once unmarred, who turned against the glory that created him. He became the adversary, the accuser, the deceiver of nations. This being is revealed in the final book of the sacred scrolls, where he appears not as a beast of mythology, but as a force of chaos, a dragon who seeks to destroy what is holy. The dragon does not wage war randomly. He wages strategic war, targeting the purposes of God, the covenants of God, the people of God, and the mountain of God. From Eden to Armageddon, he moves with fury, knowing his time is short. He has always hated the seed of the woman. He has always sought to devour the child. He has always opposed the Lamb, but he does not only appear in visions and prophecies. He manifests in the rise and fall of empires, in genocides, in idolatries, in lies clothed as light. He wears crowns, sits on thrones, and whispers into the ears of kings. He empowers regimes, he sows chaos. He divides nations, and he does not rest. He seeks to inhabit systems, inhabit movements, inhabit temples. And in the last hour his fury will increase. The dragon's rage is not aimless. It is focused, deliberate, and prophetic. It is aimed at one city, one mountain, one plan. But to understand the battle, one must first recognize the enemy. Not flesh and blood, not governments or policies, but powers and principalities. A war in the heavens that is being played out on earth. And those who are blind to this war will be caught in it unprepared, unaware that the dragon is moving the Temple Mount is not simply a piece of land. It is the most contested ground on the face of the earth, because it bears the imprint of the divine. It is the place where heaven and earth once met, where the presence of the Almighty descended in fire and filled the house built by Solomon. It is the place where Abraham lifted the knife over Isaac, where the ram was provided, where the covenant was tested and affirmed. It is the ground that David longed to build upon, and where the Ark of the Covenant once rested. This mount is the epicenter of prophecy, the throne of divine appointment, the ground chosen by God for his name to dwell. And because of that, it is hated by the enemy of God. The dragon has always sought to defile it, to occupy it, to sit where only the Most High can reign. This mountain has been desecrated, invaded, and torn down, yet it remains the focal point of the end-time drama. The enemy knows that whoever controls this mountain holds a symbolic claim to authority over the world. It is no coincidence that the most intense geopolitical tensions gather around this tiny hill in Jerusalem. The forces of the world rage and conspire over this mount because it is not about territory. It is about dominion. The future temple, foretold by the prophets, is destined to rise again upon this mount, and with it comes a convergence of powers, the prophetic, the political, the spiritual, and the apocalyptic. From this mount will come the final showdown between good and evil. It is the hill that has seen the glory fall, and the veil tear. And it will once again see the return of the King, the splitting of the mount. The culmination of the age. There exists a mystery that binds together two sacred grounds, one in the ancient heart of Jerusalem, the other in the modern heart of a nation once dedicated to God. One is the Temple Mount, where the divine presence once dwelled in glory, and the other is a place known as Ground Zero, where towers crumbled and fire fell in a day of warning. Though separated by oceans and cultures, both are ground zeros, one of ancient judgment, the other of prophetic significance in our modern age. The Temple Mount is the center of the biblical world, the throne of divine covenant, the site of sacrifice and glory, the focus of end-time prophecy. Ground Zero in America became on a single day the symbol of a nation shaking, the warning of divine removal, a breach in the hedge of protection. The mystery is that both places speak of covenant, of glory that once was, of judgment that follows departure, and of a call to return. The fire that once consumed the altar on Mount Moriah was the fire of God's presence. The fire that consumed the towers was a fire of judgment, a sign, a harbinger. One mountain bears the memory of offerings, incense, and priests. The other now holds the memory of ashes, sirens, and mourning. Yet both reveal a divine pattern. When the covenant is broken, protection lifts. When holiness is forsaken, judgment comes. The Temple Mount reveals what was and what shall be. Ground Zero reveals what is and what must be heeded. These two locations are more than places on a map. They are revelations. They unveil the spiritual state of a people and the warnings of heaven. They call forth repentance, urgency, and the discernment of times. They remind us that sacred ground, once profaned, can bring forth shaking and fire. The convergence of prophecy is one of the most critical keys to unlocking the end-time mysteries. Prophecy is not a random sequence of predictions scattered across history. It is a divine mosaic in which each piece fits perfectly into the next, forming a larger picture ordained from the foundation of the world. The signs of the end do not manifest in isolation. They appear in patterns, in synchronicities, in alignments that span the spiritual, political, natural, and celestial realms. Just as the prophets of old saw visions that overlapped generations, so too does our time reveal the convergence of signs that once were distant, but now are occurring simultaneously. Nations rising against nations, the shaking of economies, plagues that cross borders, lawlessness increasing, and Israel back in her land. These are not isolated events, but converging streams of prophecy flowing toward a singular point. That point is not only a moment in time, it is a revelation, an unveiling, an apocalypse. Convergence is what makes this moment in history unlike any other. It is not merely that wars exist, but that they coincide with spiritual apostasy, with global shaking, with moral collapse, with technological dominion, with movements that mirror ancient abominations. The fig tree has blossomed, and all the other trees with it. The watchers must now lift their eyes. The wise must discern the hour. For when prophetic signs converge, it means the timetable accelerates, the warnings intensify, and the voice from heaven speaks louder than before. Every shaking, every upheaval, every crisis becomes a trumpet blast, a cry to awaken those who slumber. This convergence is not the end, but it is the threshold. It is the doorway through which the final events shall pass, and through which the people of God must walk in understanding and boldness. The battle is not where most assume it to be. It is not first political or cultural, not of left versus right, or east versus west. It is older, deeper, and far more ancient than any earthly conflict. It is the war that began before there were thrones of men or empires to rule. It began in the heavens, when the dragon rebelled and drew with him a third of the stars. That battle was cast to the earth, and from Eden onward, it has raged in the hearts of men, in the rise and fall of civilizations, in the choices of kings and prophets, in altars and idols, in temples raised to glory or desecrated by pride. It is the unseen war that manifests through earthly struggles. The principalities and powers war behind the scenes of every decision, every law, every movement that either upholds or defies the ways of God. When nations turn against righteousness, when they exalt the profane, when they redefine what God has defined, they are not acting in a vacuum. They are aligning with the dragon's war. The signs of this battle are everywhere. Confusion is not an accident. Division is not random. Deception is not merely social. It is spiritual. Behind the curtain of the natural lies the strategy of the enemy, who wages war not with armies alone, but with ideologies, with perversions, with distractions that numb the soul. The dragon knows what is coming. He knows his time is short, and so he attacks the image, bearers of God. He targets the covenant people. He stirs hatred for Israel. He infiltrates churches with compromise. He mocks purity and exalts rebellion. Yet for those with eyes to see, the battle is not a cause for fear. It is a call to stand, to discern. To war in the Spirit, there is a law woven into the fabric of divine judgment and restoration, a pattern that plays out again and again throughout the Scriptures and throughout history. It is the law of the harbinger, the warning sign, the foreshadowing of what is to come. Before judgment falls, there is always a warning. Before destruction, a shaking. Before the fall of a nation, the sound of the trumpet. The judgments of God are never without mercy. The warnings come not to condemn, but to awaken. They are calls of love, urgent, piercing, and often uncomfortable. In ancient Israel, before the fall of Jerusalem, there were voices that cried out. Prophets walked the streets declaring what was coming, but the people hardened their hearts. The walls were strong, the economy was thriving, the nation was secure. Or so it seemed, but the warning signs were all around. The hedge had been breached, the blessings were lifting, the presence was withdrawing. And the people did not see. In the same way, the modern world has been given harbingers, shakings that come not from man, but from the hand that formed the nations. Towers fall, markets collapse, pandemics spread, fires rage, and the voice behind it all calls a people to return. The harbingers speak not only of what is, but of what is yet to come. They point to a breach that has not been repaired, to a covenant that has been forgotten, to a nation that once knew God, but has turned from his ways. Yet even now, in the midst of shaking, the call goes forth, return, repent, wake up. The warnings are not for destruction, but for redemption. They are the mercy of God calling his people back before the storm fully breaks. Those who discern the harbingers are those who will not be overtaken. The rage of the dragon is not passive, and it is not scattered. It is focused, targeted, and it moves with intention against the purposes of God. The enemy does not waste energy warring against what does not matter. He does not rage against confusion or rebellion. He fuels them, but he does rage against the holy. He rages against what is consecrated, what bears the mark of God's covenant, what reflects heaven's order on earth. That rage has always centered on the people of the covenant, and in the last days it will intensify. The scriptures reveal that when the dragon is cast down, his wrath is unleashed, and his fury is turned toward the remnant, toward those who keep the commandments of God and bear witness to the truth. The ancient enemy seeks to stop the restoration of Israel, to divide Jerusalem, to defile the sacred ground of the Temple Mount, to silence the prophetic voice, and to infiltrate the assembly of believers with doctrines that corrupt. The fury of the dragon is behind the rising persecution of the faithful, the redefinition of righteousness, the exaltation of darkness as light, and the suppression of truth in the public square. He seeks to wear down the saints, to weary them, to cause them to grow cold, to be distracted, to turn inward, to compromise. His war is not only physical, it is psychological, emotional, and spiritual. He speaks through culture, through legislation, through media, through systems designed to reshape the minds of generations. Yet all of it points to a deeper reality. The dragon rages because he knows his time is short. His defeat was sealed at the cross, his authority stripped, his dominion limited, and his end appointed. The fury is real, but it is also desperate, for he cannot stop what is written. The temple is not just a building of stone and gold. It is the throne of divine appointment, the place where the glory once dwelled between the cherubim, where the presence of the Most High descended in fire, and where heaven met earth. Every detail of the temple was given by revelation, every measurement a mystery, every ordinance a shadow of the eternal. It stood as the centerpiece of covenant, the heart of Israel's worship, the dwelling of the name. But the enemy has always hated the temple because it represents the authority of God on earth, the order of heaven imposed upon chaos, the presence of holiness among the fallen. That is why the temple was desecrated, first by Babylon, then by Antiochus, and finally destroyed by Rome. Yet prophecy declares that it will rise again. A third temple will come, and its appearance will signal the acceleration of the end. The world will marvel, nations will rage, and the prophetic timeline will shift. But the rising of the temple will also invite another, the one who exalts himself, the man of sin, the one who enters the holy place and proclaims himself to be God. The rebuilt temple will become the focal point of the final deception, and from it will come the greatest trial of the nations. Yet even that moment will serve the purposes of God, for what was torn down will one day be filled again, not with the blood of goats, but with the glory of the King. The temple will once again become the center, not only of worship, but of reign. It is from Zion that the law shall go forth, from Jerusalem that the word will flow to the nations. The rising of the temple is both a sign and a sword. The voice of the watchman is rising again in the land. In ancient days the watchman stood upon the wall, high above the city, with eyes fixed on the horizon. His duty was not comfort, not diplomacy, not silence, but warning. He saw what others could not yet see. He discerned the movements in the distance, the forming of clouds, the riding of horses, the glint of swords in the sun, and when he saw, he lifted his voice. Whether the people listened or not, he cried out. In the end-time mystery, the call of the watchman returns. The Spirit is stirring up those who will not be silent, who will not trade the trumpet for applause, who will not be bought or broken by fear or fatigue. The days demand the sound of warning. The wall must be manned. The night is deepening. The shadows are stretching, and the enemy draws near, not always with an army, but with lies, with comfort, with seduction, with distraction. The role of the watchman is now prophetic. He sees not just what is visible, but what is coming. He feels the tremors beneath the surface. He hears the whisper of judgment in the winds. He discerns the time. But the watchman is not welcomed. His cry interrupts the complacency. His warning shakes the sleep. The people would rather remain in the illusion that all is well, that peace is permanent, that judgment is a relic of the past. But the faithful watchman cannot remain silent. He must lift the trumpet, sound the alarm, and cry aloud. The blood is not to be on his hands. He must warn whether the people heed the call or turn away. The call is going forth again to those who will take their place on the wall. The return of the King is not a metaphor, not a symbol, not a poetic image. It is a coming event, real, literal, and unstoppable. The same feet that once walked the dusty roads of Galilee, that stood on the Mount of Olives, that were pierced upon the wood, shall stand again upon that same mountain. The King will not return as the Lamb, but as the Lion, not in silence, but with the sound of the trumpet, not to be judged, but to judge. The heavens will part, the sky will roll back like a scroll, the stars will fall, and every eye shall see. The nations will mourn, the kings of the earth will tremble, the armies of darkness will gather, but none shall stand against him. His robes are dipped in blood, his name is called Faithful and True, and he comes riding on the white horse of victory. This is the blessed hope, the culmination of the ages, the fulfillment of every prophecy, every promise, every mystery. He comes not only to reign, but to restore, to heal what was broken, to rebuild what was torn down, to redeem what was lost. The mountain shall split in two, the waters shall flow from the threshold, the desert shall bloom, and the nations shall come to the light of his rising. From Zion the word shall go forth. From Jerusalem the throne shall be established, and the knowledge of the glory of the Lord shall cover the earth as the waters cover the sea. The final battle will not end in defeat but in victory. The kingdoms of this world shall become the kingdom of our God. And all creation shall lift up its voice. The King is coming not in secret, but in glory, majesty, and power.